CALPADS Error Resolution Plan 0390E4. Missing IEP includes post-secondary goals indicator. The first step when troubleshooting any error in CALPADS is always to consult the CALPADS error list. On the left, you can see we have error number and error name. These two columns are used strictly for reference. So CALPADS provides you with the error number Plan 0390E4, and next to the error number in CALPADS, it shows you the error name. Missing IEP includes post-secondary goals indicated. So oftentimes, we try to troubleshoot with just this information. If we're unfamiliar with the error, this is not adequate. We need more information, and so that's why you always consult the CALPADS error list. So you can see the next column towards the middle is error description. If the special education plan type code is 100 IEP and the student is older than 16 or equal to 16, then the IEP includes post-secondary goals indicator must be populated. This field has to have an indication of yes or no once the student turns 16. Right? We can see that this is a fatal error. So this CDD will prevent certification if it goes unresolved. Now the fields validated help you identify where to look in CALPADS to identify the nature of the discrepancy. So you can see that it says SINF data. We're going to look at the student's demographic record and verify the student's birth date. Make sure that the student is 16 or above. SWDS data, the student special education status or students with disability status data, making sure that the student is eligible and participating on the date or for the reporting period. And then we're going to look at the plan data, right? It's important to compare the plan effective start date of the record that is missing. The IEP includes post-secondary goals, right? So you want to make sure that the plan is effective over the student's 16th birthday, which requires that data to be populated. And then the suggested resolution helps us think about ways to correct the error. So it says verify the student's age is correct in CALPADS by comparing the student information system data, your local system, to CALPADS. So you want to verify that information is correct. The student is actually 16 on the date that CALPADS believes the student is 16. And then if so, populate the IEP includes post-secondary goals indicator. All right, so that's the error list. Often we have to reference other documentation in addition to the error list, and the CALPADS file specification is a great document that tells us what is expected in particular fields, why they must be populated. So you can see in the definition under the field that the IEP includes post-secondary goals indicator is an indication of whether or not the student's individualized education program includes appropriate measurable post-secondary goals or goals that cover education or training, employment, and as needed, independent living. So oftentimes the student may not have post-secondary goals in their IEP yet, and we feel like not populating the field is appropriate, but it's not. It has to be yes or no, indicating whether or not. They're not necessarily looking for the post-secondary goals. They just want to know if this 16-year-old student has the goals or not. So the file specification gives us further clarity. Then we have the CALPADS data guide. It has some CFS information as well. You can see that it clearly says at the bottom, a Y indicates the student's IEP includes post-secondary goals, and an N, no, would indicate that it does not. Top right under comment, this is only required for students with an IEP that are 16 years old, right? So again, just to further reiterate that the field has to be populated. You have to indicate yes or no once a student turns 16. And then additional resources available to you are the CSIS YouTube training channel. There was a Roadshow, the special education data redesign from Brandy went through and told us the changes of the file redesign. introduced the students with disability status, the meet file, the plan, and the serve or the services. Anyway, within this training, she explains to us the expectations of when records are reported. And so highlighted was a portion in that training where she talked about when a plan record should be reported. Number 5, an IEP is amended to correct one of the transition indicators. So we have an indicator if the student is receiving their post-secondary goals, the student turns 16, it is expected that a plan record is submitted for that student's 16th birthday to amend that information if it's missing. And so understanding where to go to find information is very important. It's constantly changing, being added to. There's not one single location, but when you're troubleshooting, you have to be familiar with these resources, right? And so that's a big step to resolving errors independently and quickly is knowing what resources to go to. So what are the causes for the Plan 0390E4 error, right? Sometimes the student's 16th birthday will occur since the last plan became effective, right? So student has their annual review, the record's perfectly fine, they turned 16, nothing's changed and nothing's required to change by statute. However, in CALPADS, you have to indicate, because it is required, to tell us whether or not the student has their post-secondary goals in that IEP. So you can amend the record, update no, that student hasn't had their post-secondary goals included yet. And then when they have their next meeting, maybe that's when you and the parents go over and include their post-secondary goals. But that indication of yes or no has to be there once the students turn 16. Okay, and then update to the IEP includes post-secondary goals indicator done incorrectly. Plan record is not amended. So one thing that could happen is you can intentionally try to update the student's plan record and the IEP, but if you don't submit amended record on that student's 16th birthday, if it's after, the error is still going to trigger. It's not amended correctly or not updated correctly. The amendment, that new plan record, has to be submitted on that student's 16th birthday. And then the last common scenario is the plan record is incomplete. The IEP includes post-secondary goals, but the indicator is not populated, right? You submit the record and just forget to populate it. It's just missed. So in that scenario, you can update that record simply by indicating the post-secondary goals, right? No amendments needed if it's just a data error. You can just correct the record. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and look at a demo. So I'm at the certification status or screen, right? To get there, use the left navigation. I go to certification status, LEA approval. You probably won't see SELPA approval. You'll just have LEA approval. Click this link and it'll bring you to this page. You can see all the certification status, the snapshots here. Special education, there's discipline reports at end of year 3 that you will want to review. And there's the special education data specifically at end of year 4. So you just click this link. You can see that there's 10 total errors, 9 are fatal, 1 is a warning. I just don't get to the screen I want to get to when I click the errors. I always click the submission link. And that will take you to end of year 4 certification details, right? And so this is a summary at the top. You can look at different revisions if you have one in review or if you LEA approve one, and there's also a revised and certified here. You can cycle through. Currently, you only have the revised uncertified revision. And then what's important here is this tells you the last revision you had, right? So this is your revision create date, and this is the CDD runtime. That's important because you have no certification errors. What I mean by certification errors, there's no prefix that says CERT. They're all planned. So these are CDDs, certification data discrepancies, which is advantageous for you. Certification errors, cert errors, can only be resolved on this screen. DDs or CDDs, you can use the data discrepancy screen, which is much more responsive. That's why I say advantageous that these are certification data discrepancies. And so I'll explain that now. As you can see, there's a single record triggering all these errors. We don't know if there's 6, 7 different records or if all these errors are associated to one record, right? It doesn't tell us. And if we click show, so I clicked this button previously, Plan0390E4, that's what you can see is being revealed down here. It only shows us that record, right? So if we go to the DD screen, click this link or right click and open in a new tab, here we are. Data discrepancies. You're going to have to go to end of year 4, right? Special education programs. And then you're going to have to apply the filter. Once you do that, the summary grid and the display grid will be revealed. And you can see, just like the certification screen, all the errors and a link to the user manual, how to resolve them. But down here, this is why it's advantageous. I can see that they're all associated to a single student, with the exception of this last error. If you click view, the record appears. And what's important is the special education effective start date tells us which plan is triggering the error. I can go to the next record and I can confirm it's the same record plan, right? Because the effective start date. And just to reiterate, even the third error is on the same plan if you look at the plan effective start date, right? So I know the majority of these errors for this student, 816, this guy here, are going to be on the same plan. The prefix tells me it's the plan. And because the majority of them are missing, that means that record needs to be updated, right? So to get to that record in CALPADS, I can right click and go to a new tab, or I can just click it. I usually right click so I could come back to this screen and use it as a reference. When I click the SSID, it takes me to the student detail screen. That's what we have here. But I scroll down in the student's record and I come to plans. Remember, we're looking for the 8/30/2023 effective start date. When we were on the DD screen and we click view record, the effective start date, the plan effective start date, special education plan effective start date right here is 8/30/2023. So I know that's the record that is triggering all these CDDs or DDs. So here we are, and I'm going to open it. Okay, so Plan 390, right? Again, I can open the user manual directly. If I right click this, open a new tab, I can have the error for reference. If the special education plan type code is 100 and the student age is greater or equal to 16, then the IEP includes post-secondary goals indicator, right? So find the post-secondary goals. IEP includes post-secondary goals. Currently, it's not applicable. Maybe at the time the record became effective, the student hadn't yet turned 16, but now over the course of this record, the student turned 16, so it needs to be updated. You can see subsequent records have been submitted and they are not triggering the error, so these are correct. But at the time, there was a period of time where this student was 16 and this record was effective. In between 8/30/2023 and 1/11/24, at some point in time, that student turned 16, and all of a sudden, you need to have record of if the post-secondary goals are included in IEP. It could be yes, it could be no. It just has to be indicated. That's how you would resolve that particular error. And the reason why I keep the DD screen open is then you can go down and look at the next one. Missing post-secondary goals updated annually indicator. So here, again, post-secondary goals updated annually, yes or no. And you'll get the gist of it, right? Most of these indicators trigger on the student turning 16, and you can see here they're all not applicable. So you probably have to look in the student's IEP and put yes or no. Just update these fields. When you're finished, you're just going to click post. And that's how you would resolve the errors for this student. Now, it's CALPADS. Nothing's immediate. One of the things that's advantageous is the discrepancies run quicker than the snapshot. They don't run as quick as they used to. They've made changes, unfortunately, but they still are quicker than the snapshot. So I would estimate that sometime today, you could come back and see these errors resolved. Within a few minutes of resolving them, if you click the view button, this won't open up. It'll just say error occurred. That's an indication to me that CalPads cannot find the discrepant data anymore. And so you just get an error occurred. That error occurred message will resolve once the discrepancies run. But if you want immediate confirmation or near to immediate, resolve these errors, give it a couple minutes, and then when you click view, it should say error occurred. It won't have any of this information associated with it because CalPads can't find it. It won't be discrepant.